you get caught up in sometimes unexpectedly. So, as you know, Mr. Shekhar Gupta is, as how should I call it, an intrepid journalist, judicious editor, and a popular TV show host, and a cause-driven entrepreneur. And he is very well known in the Indian media. He is a long-time observer of Indian and international politics as well as the economy, and has great insights about not just India, but how events unfold in the world. He is one of the few editors, if I may say, who still remains, who can say what they see as they see it and talk back to people and policymakers. Mr. Gupta writes an influential column, which most of you, I'm sure, have read, called National Interest, which has been running for many years, and which has also been compiled into a bestseller called Anticipating India. And he also is still very active on the screen, and his chat shows feature in the Prince video channel as well as NDTV. He had been doing Walk the Talk and Off the Cuff, and he therefore went on and founded and is the editor-in-chief of the Print, which is a startup in new editorial space of trying to be very objective and having a liberal worldview of matters. He was formerly involved with the Indian Express, where he was the editor for 19 years. And of those 19, 13, he was the chief executive of the paper. He is also a Padma Bhushan recipient, and has his own style and has been involved with events over the decades that they have unfolded in India. So it is a great pleasure to have you here with us, Shekhar, today. And thank you for doing this. And if I may just add one last word of introduction, it is always good to welcome not just what your career says, but as a friend, to welcome you here very warmly on this call. So Shekhar, all over to you now.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all. I'm sorry, we've had some confusions, which are partly because of technology. And I use multiple devices, so sometimes working from home causes a problem. Some blame also goes with the UP government, because too much is happening in UP and we spend too much time figuring out what exactly has happened, because there is information and disinformation, but overall news, at least on the news front, is not happy. So those things catch your attention, and news sometimes takes precedence over everything else. So thank you very much for your patience. And Harsh, I'm so grateful. You are very flattering and very generous. You said that I support IMA. Who am I to support IMA? In fact, IMA should be supporting us. We've set up the Print, which is the digital platform, and digital platforms and news media now all runs on subscriptions, because we can't be a non-profit foundation funded, because all foundations have their agendas. We don't want any. We want non-hyphenated journalism fully. And then people like you, we have to reach out to people like you to subscribe, pay for what you consume. So I think I will request Rekha if she'll put out our subscription appeal to all your members. And I hope all your members will, this will cost them all less than a lunch for one person to subscribe for 2 years. So I hope they will do that. Having said that, I will come to your subject now. Now, you say economy in the times of COVID. When I say economy, I mean political economy, because I am not an economist. I have no pretense. I read Nainan. That's the reason we publish Nainan with my column, and BS publishes my column with Nainan's column. That's an exchange between us, because he brings in the economics, I bring in the politics. But political economy is central to all politics now. Now, when you ask me in times of COVID, let me take your mind back to the statutory warning that we see on mutual fund advertising. What does it say? Past performance is not an indicator of future prospects. Now, that may apply for mutual funds, but that does not apply for politics or political economy. Because COVID came, it is a calamity. It is, what was it called? It's God's act, something like that. It's
Pandemic.
no, it was called some God's act or God's,
Hand of God or something, God's act, something, right.
Act of God. So until the act of God happened, the human hand has done enough to ruin our economy, because we had 7 quarters of consistent fall in the growth rates. Now, 7 quarters doesn't just happen like that at a time when global economy was booming, global trade was booming. So just because the pandemic happened, what has happened today has not happened. In fact, I was reflecting on the column I need to write today, and you see all the new data that's now come in, all the global surveys, which were all showing India doing a little bit better year after year. All of them now show India doing badly. So India suffered a setback on everything. In fact, this morning, the Global Freedom Index has come in, and India has fallen, I think, several ranks in double digits. India fell on Human Development Index by 2 ranks. India was improving slowly, but fell. And this is despite so many welfare programs which seem to be working well. But the most disturbing thing that we have seen over the last couple of days, and I'm surprised that it has found inadequate coverage in the media, but that's mainly because data is sometimes complex and we journalists are not endowed with a lot of intellect. So we tend not to understand data. But if you look at the first phase of the National Family Health Survey, it is a disaster. It's a knock on our heads. It's a wake-up call. And I'm also surprised with the opposition. Our leader of the opposition is happy tweeting about this and that, but he's not reading up the National Family Health Survey. The National Family Health Survey tells you that for the first time since 98-99, your child nutrition figures have collapsed, have fallen. Since 1998-99, in every NFHS, this is the 5th NFHS, first started in 92-93. This is the first NFHS in which we have reversed our gains on child nutrition. So what's happened in India is, in major states, and this is phase 1. So phase 2 is yet to come in, which will have many of the usual suspect states, that means Bimaru states. That is Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, that has to still come in. But this tells you that in many major states, in fact, most major states, your everything that should be down is up. Your child wasting is up. Your child stunting is up. So our children now under 5 are shorter than before and shorter than 5 years before. So don't blame the UPA. All this is about children born after Mr. Modi took over power. This is a survey for 2019-20, and this data is for children up to 5 years old. So once again, these are Modi government's children. These were born under Modi government. So stunting has gone up almost across the board. Wasting. Now stunting is when a child does not reach the height that is prescribed or that is expected at his or her age for that ethnicity. So that is stunting. Wasting is when there is height, but there is not enough weight, not enough muscle on the body. So stunting and wasting have both gone up. And if we think that is bad, then the percentage of underweight children has also gone up. And you want to see how bad the news is? I will tell you the 4th data point about something else that has gone up. While stunting, wasting, and underweight children have gone up, also obesity among the children has gone up. So what is it telling you? That this country's children are getting fatter and yet getting more malnourished and shorter and underweight. Now, you can put any analytical points to this. One, there are a couple of things you can't do. You can't blame the past for this because these children are only born now. They were not born earlier. In fact, most of them were even conceived now. They were not conceived earlier. The second thing is that it's not as if there is shortage of grain in India. because you've seen that, in fact, one thing this government has done right is distribute a lot of grain, particularly after the pandemic. So, roti chawal, kisi ko khas kami nahi hai. But what's happened is, at the same time, if you look at this data, now I know that critics of the Modi government, now I speak the facts as I see them, so I get abused by both sides often, which is fine, as long as I'm not caught on facts. But so the first thing that Modi critics will say, see, it tells you that Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is rubbish. This tells you that all the claims of National Nutrition Mission are fake. They are not. In fact, the same survey tells you that sanitation levels have improved. The same survey tells you that availability of toilets has improved. The same survey also tells you that the reach and range of ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme, has also improved. Then why have you got these results? That suddenly gains of 20 years since the reform have now been given away like this. And the answer is, and that is where I'm coming now, the answer is that this is a quote that I read from an expert called Purnima Menon on India Spend. I think she's from IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, who said that, look, child's development and child's growth is a three-legged stool. So one leg may be sanitation, one leg may be government intervention into nutrition, but the third leg is also family income. So if in this period, your family income has not been rising or it's been falling because your growth has been declining through these 5 years, barring the first year, and ever since the demonetization came, it's a one-way journey. Although we've changed our methods of calculating our GDP, which I know that all of you people can't question, all of you have to repeat it, but it's not a method of calculating GDP that most of the world trusts anymore. That's a harsh reality. So it does mean that among the poor, family incomes, one, are not rising, and second, most likely they've been going down. Now, remember, once again, data is very cruel because data does not mold itself to suit our convenience. You can't even blame COVID for it because this survey is for a period before COVID. So what's happened this year will reflect going ahead, not going back. So now you say कि क्या हुआ? तो उसमें एक पुराना पता नहीं मुझे किसकी लाइन है, मैं भूल गया, एक शेर है, लेकिन ये मौलाना अबुल कलाम आजाद ने लोकसभा में नेहरू जी से कहा था 1956 में, तू इधर उधर की ना बात कर, ये बता के काफिला क्यों लुटा, है ना, तेरी मुझे रहजनों से गिला नहीं, तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है. That means that don't tell me this and that, you tell me how did my caravan looted. And I have no complaint with the thugs, with the dacoits, because it's their job to loot. I have questions about your leadership. So when you see all this advertising, all these claims, all this tom-tomming, put it to the test of data. If the data tells you that in all these international parameters, which is coming out now, India has fallen. The fact is that we were celebrating going up on the same parameters until now. Now everywhere we have fallen. And this one, National Family Health Survey on children's nutrition, is very scary. Again, I know that immediately people will think, अरे यार ये इसमें बिहार included है ना, बिहार ने मार दिया होगा. मैं आपको बताता हूँ, the facts are completely counterintuitive. In fact, in Bihar, stunting has improved from 48.6% to 42%. So Bihar has actually bucked the declining trend elsewhere. In Bihar, wasting has improved from 46% to 42%. In Bihar, everything has improved. It is unfortunately the rest of the country, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Kerala. Kerala is a disaster. India's richest state, Goa, is a disaster, which means something has gone wrong. And what that something has gone wrong logically right now, because it's a 5-year data. And don't even say some foreign foundation has done it. It's Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. In fact, I'm waiting for the government now to withdraw this data and say that they will look at it again. But it's Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. How it got out, I don't know. But sometimes this is government of India, it's not perfect, and lack of perfection helps us understand the truth. So this is what has happened, and this tells you that whatever we've been doing with our economy over the past few years is not right. It is not working. Now, having said that, is there anything that we are doing right? Frankly, we've done a lot right. Look at big things like bankruptcy reform, GST. These are bold, heavy reformist things. See also some of the other reform in other areas. The areas where it hasn't worked, like say power, but it has worked in many other areas. Even now, agriculture reforms, labor reforms, these are big ticket reforms. I will acknowledge that, and I have written that. I'm never off the record. Whatever I say on the record. But the fact is that so I repeat that same line again. तो इधर उधर की ना बात कर, ये बता के काफिला क्यों लुटा, मुझे रह जनों से गिला नहीं, तेरी रहबरी का सवाल है. So what have we done wrong? For this to have gone wrong this much, something has gone wrong, not with our economics, but it has gone wrong with our political economy. And I will tell you what's gone wrong, in my view, with our political economy. What's gone wrong is that this government is the most political formulation in India's history. Every government is political. Even Gowda's government was political. But some governments are more political in the sense that they make winning an election central to everything. And there, if you're getting grain to people, you're getting 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees to them, you think people's bellies are full, and then you give them the other formula and mandir and this and that, and the fear of the Muslim, and they'll vote for you, so you win your election. So you actually, people say that this government has very successfully disintermediated the Muslim voter, that the Muslim vote doesn't count, which is true. And politicians are entitled to do that. But they have also in many ways disintermediated the economy from Indian politics, which means people have no longer voted for growth in the last several elections now. On 2014, they voted on the promise of growth. 2019, 2018, 17, I would say 18 UP elections onwards, they are voting on a bunch of other considerations. Now, you want to see how it works in other areas and what we mean by a purely political government, a fully political government, a total politics government. How this works is that because you need to win elections in West Bengal and Assam, you call Bengali immigrants termites. Then you also say we will throw them in the Bay of Bengal. It gets you popularity in those states. But what happens? Bangladesh gets upset with you. Bangladesh is the only neighbor that is friendly with you. Bangladesh and India have done a lot for each other, including trading each other's terrorists. We are reopening our railway lines. We are hoping to reopen our highways. We have reopened our river transport. It's a finger in Pakistan's eye. Bangladesh is rising. On all social indicators, Bangladesh beats Pakistan. So think about it. And in fact, on many social indicators, Bangladesh beats India. In fact, on all social indicators, Bangladesh beats our Bengal and our Assam and our Tripura, the three Indian states bordering them. This year, Bangladesh will also go above India for their per capita GDP. Now, would we have preferred to have a Bengali-speaking Pakistan to our east, a hostile Bengali Muslim country to our east? This is a country which still has a Hindu in a more senior position in its cabinet than we have a Muslim in our cabinet. Both countries have their own realities, but it is true that Bangladesh is not a classical Islamic country. It has a pretense of being secular. Mr. Modi had the right instincts. In fact, in 2013, when UPA was struggling to settle the boundary issue with Bangladesh, opposition was coming from the BJP, especially Sushma Swaraj in parliament, who said that this will be a sellout. And everybody knew that this was an agreement in India's territorial interest, in India's strategic interest, and India's longer term interest. So in fact, then I had written an article headlined, Dear Narendra Bhai, saying that we know, this is 2013, You are now the most powerful man in the BJP already. Your voice counts. You are going to be the leader now. Please lean on your party. Tell them to let the UPA government conclude this agreement with Bangladesh. But BJP didn't do that, disappointingly. Yet, as soon as Mr. Modi came to power, his instinct was right. Among the first things he did on foreign policy was sign this boundary deal with West Bengal. Not only that, he was also able to sell this to Mamata Banerjee. The only thing he was still not able to do is to get an accord on Tista waters. But that created such a lot of goodwill in Bangladesh that from there, the way was just ahead. And then what happened? Because you are a purely political government, because your first thing, जिसको हम कहते हैं भूखे को 2+2 4 रोटियां. The non-Hindi people, I don't know how to translate it. You ask a starving person what is 2+2, he will say 4 rotis, because a hungry person only thinks of rotis. So similarly, when you say a fully political government, for it 2+2 is 4 votes. So you knew that the only way you could expand your footprint in Assam and West Bengal is by building a fizza against Bengali immigrants. So this language got used, and Bangladesh has a democracy as well. Bangladesh has politics as well. Bangladesh government also has, in fact, they have a much bigger threat from Islamic militancy and Islamic extremism. In fact, IS, the only country in the subcontinent where IS is active and has carried out major operations is Bangladesh. So it caused problems for Hasina right away, and the Chinese moved in. And now you see yesterday, Mr. Modi had a summit meeting, a virtual summit with Sheikh Hasina. It was a very good summit. India is now offering deals, concessions, this and that. But the fact is that I worry that West Bengal elections are coming up. And at some point, that rhetoric will come back. So will you then once again trade the national strategic interest for your narrow, in a commentator's point of view, one who's fighting an election, nothing is narrow. If you're winning, then that is your broad objective. But that is where we have gone wrong on the economy as well. While we promised growth, we have also realized that by a combination of many things, we can also keep winning without the growth, with the notion of glory, success, etc., etc. However, if you see all the data that's come out now, and more will come out as days go by, India will not look good. India is not looking good at this point. That is the truth. I can either hide in fear so that I don't face criticism and not speak the truth, or I can win praise by speaking lies. But this is the reality right now. At the same time, the reality is that this government has made a good use of the COVID crisis to push some really audacious reforms. And in all my writings, you will find labor reforms, agriculture reforms. I'm supporting strongly, to the extent of saying that this is Narendra Modi's Thatcher moment. Because what happens is, when you have a majority, when you have no threat to your government, then you can make a couple of mistakes also. It's like when I'm watching on the side, I have several eyes. So I'm watching on the side the India-Australia test match, that when you have a deep batting lineup, then one odd batsman get out, you can always recover. So a government with a majority strength, a leader with complete control over his party, no challenge within or outside, has the leeway to, if he goes on the front foot and finds himself on the wrong foot, can come back to the back foot and bat, or if loses a batsman or two, someone else will come in. So Steve Smith has got out, but Labuschagn's there, even if dropped 3 times. So these are things, advantages that this government has. So I am now hoping, and I know that we started late, so I will not take too long. You people ask me questions, I might not give you very short answers. But the basic thing now is that this is the time now for this government to take a deep breath and make a lot of course corrections. Now there is Assam and Bengal elections coming up now. Then in India, every year there's an election, and a couple of years then UP will come. So if it goes on like that, India cannot afford, and I think even Narendra Modi cannot afford 2 more years of this kind of an economic stall and this kind of a real fall in quality of life for the poor. This is a reality now. These are Government of India's figures. I hope no officer or minister is fried for letting these figures out. But this is worrying, and knowing Narendra Modi to be a very smart, very intelligent, and very astute leader, I think he's also reading this, and we might see more focus. That is the optimistic note on which I would end this, because we've all said that nobody should waste a crisis. I think this government has made good use of the COVID crisis. Where I disagree with it is this whole wave of protectionism, which will not do well for India. But let us see how this goes. Sometimes reality may not be as bad as the rhetoric. Sometimes reality is worse than the rhetoric. So we will see what happens. Also, it's a changing world now. It's a changed world already, to the extent that Abe has gone. So one who's come in is also of the same type, but he's not Abe. Trump has definitely gone now. Even Trump cannot say I am not gone. He might say unfairly, but he's gone. And you can see that Democrats will have a slightly different, nuanced view of India. See that in the appointment of the Democratic Party's deputy chair for the India caucus. That's a man called Rob Bhatia, who the overseas friends of the BJP, etc., had campaigned strongly against for allegedly being anti-Hindu and anti-Modi. So it's also a changing world. Boris Johnson is not as strong as he used to be. Chinese are sitting at our doors. Americans will open out to Iran. We don't know what will happen between Turkey and the rest of the world. So this is a very, very fascinating world with new complications. In this, any government of India needs complete focus on governance for the next couple of years, because national elections are still 3 years away. So I think I will conclude on that note, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for that very interesting and insightful observation, and the fact that you are talking about how the political side actually has a bearing on the economy, which is borne out by data. I think that's the point that you are making. We have a few questions. Mr. Ganesh Natarajan, you had a question. Are you there on the call? And can we unmute him for him question? Yeah.
Shekharji, fantastic dissertation as always. I had a question. I mean, and I think you alluded to that. That if the country votes not for growth, but for other issues, at the same time, the Atmanirbhar imperative, we have symmetry with China, which is going completely astray. So how would you suggest we get people to wake up and say, yeah, this whole development work is so important for the country, let's focus on that?
So all wake-up calls have to be top-down. So the top has to wake up. Because the Chinese have come and created a new challenge. Because with Pakistan, you can start something and end it by claiming victory. It is tough to start something with China because you are not sure. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm hoping I'm on our side, and I do hope, I'm sure we'll win. But you can't be sure when you are in power. So these are new challenges. So everybody has to wake up. But first, at the top, people have to wake up thinking that winning elections is not everything. Because winning elections can also be a function of how bad your opposition is, which it is right now.
So quick corollary, do you think the farmer issue will become the wake-up call?
Well, I hope it does. I hope it does, because the wake-up call, what kind of wake-up call is that? I support the farm bill, so I hope the government doesn't go back on these and government takes it on the chin and carries on. But it will be a wake-up call in the sense that when you do these wide-ranging changes or reforms, you have to take other people along. You have to take your states along. You have to take your chief ministers along. You cannot take your opposition chief ministers along only on the fear of the central agencies raiding them. Because at this point, among the political opponents, most of them, that fear is now over, because people see that as expected. That you say something critical or something, somebody will come calling, or there'll be a leak or a rumor. So actually, this government is missing an Arun Jaitley, because the kind of thing he did, talking to all state governments, getting them together on GST, that's the kind of thing that now needs to be done on agriculture, labor, etc., also. You cannot have a consistently hostile relationship with non-BJP states. So Mr. Modi has given us the closure of cooperative federalism. That cooperative federalism has to work out in real life.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Sudhir Jalan, you wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead, Mr. Jalan. We can't hear you. I think you are.
I'm muted.
No, we can hear you now.
Now it's okay. Hello, Shekhar. As
Hi, sir.
usual,
How are you?
fine, thank you, Shekhar. Always very enjoyable listening to you, and you're so objective in your approach. I have one comment on the economy. I think we have had the worst 12 to 15 month period from June 19, pre-COVID, till say June 20 or July 20. And all the figures were terrible. Now, in India, of course, we take action only when the chips are down. It happened in 91, and I think the COVID has done us a lot of good in this sense. Our backs were to the wall. Modi ji has at last brought all these reforms which were necessary, and for which, in spite of his majority, he did not have the courage to do so. So the labor, farm, all these things coming, land is still in the pipeline. We in industry generally feel that good times are ahead in the year or two forward. What's your feel now?
Well, I'm very happy to agree with you. I am an optimistic person, so I hope. But as I said, that remember that mutual funds warning. So I hope that warning is actually true in this case, that past performance is not a guide to the future, because past performance to that extent does not indicate a good future. So I hope that you are right, and a big departure is now made, sort of spurred by the crisis. I live in the same country as you do, and we all have a stake in things turning around now.
Okay. Shekhar, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You touched on one issue which you said about the opposition. So what has really happened? The whole issue is that somewhere along the line, the opposition is at a national level. I'm not just talking of Congress party alone, but even other people. That whole space seems to have been, say, vacated or abdicated. And okay, one is that people say and you are not being heard, or you are not being sort of put in the limelight. What is your understanding of that as to where it is going? And is there any solution coming back? What is happening there?
Look, there can be 20 explanations, but all of them are plausible. From opposition being incompetent, to opposition not being united, to the preeminent leader of the opposition being completely out of focus all the time. Because ultimately, if somebody has to unite the opposition, there has to be core to it. That core can only be the Congress party, because it still has 20% of the vote. Even in the last election, it got 20% of the vote. It's a lot of vote. If 20 becomes 30, the political equations of the country change. So, but if that core is not willing, if doesn't know whether it's going or not going, see that visual of Rahul Gandhi at the steps of Rashtrapati Bhavan, talking to the media after opposition leaders had gone to meet the president against farm bills. Who's to his left and who's to his right? Please Google that picture. To his left is Sitaram Yechuri. To his right is D. Raja, CPM and CPI. What about his own party men? What about his coalition partners? What about DMK? What about Jharkhand Mukti Morcha? What about Shiv Sena? What about the NCP? Those are his coalition partners. So उसका दिल तो लगता है लेफ्ट के साथ में, कोलिशन पार्टनर है सारे दूसरे लोग जो पसंद नहीं है. So that is no way to unite the, and that's one. So that is the essential problem, and then you can blame the media, etc., etc. But the fact is that media also wants eyeballs. So I will bet for the media in this case, because the moment you write something about Modi, you say something about Modi, it works. I will also tell you something else. The moment you say something about Manmohan Singh, write something about Manmohan Singh, or even if you make say 2-para statement, it works. It immediately goes viral because audiences are not stupid. So the other thing is that if you just go back to India's political history, it teaches you that a big leader is never defeated by a rival. A big leader has to defeat himself or herself, as Mrs. Gandhi did in 1977. Rahul Gandhi defeated himself in 1989. Vajpayee Advani defeated themselves in 2004 by advancing that election by 6 months. UPA, although it was not a big leader, but defeated itself in the second term, defeated itself so badly by what I then described as the autoimmune disease of that government, that the party started eating up its own government and its own prime minister. So people of India said, they really revolted. They said, we don't want a prime minister who's pushed around all the time. You have these young fellows tearing off ordinances and the prime minister can do nothing. He has to swallow his pride. We want a strong prime minister. So they got a very strong prime minister, because people in a democracy are not homeopaths. People are surgeons. So they don't give you the medicine in harmless, chota doses. They apply the cut, and that's what happened. So once again, remember that a big leader has to defeat himself.
Right. Okay. How, the issue is how do we come back, is the point. You have said some things, but do you have any more thoughts around this as to how do we come back and how long will it take? Because you have pointed to the fact that if I may use a term, if this very strong and absolute kind of leadership continues with this agenda, from their point of view, they may be right. But how long will it be before? Because at some point, the economic consequences, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about the roti, kapda, makan. Somewhere down the line, it will, and some of the statistics that you've talked about. So anybody's guess, but what's your understanding or take on this?
Well, first of all, it's my wish. I'll tell you what my wish is. My wish is that we calm down our politics for the next 2 years, because we are coming out of a very big crisis. Whatever happens, the best case scenario also this year, we'll have a negative growth almost in 2 figures. It may be 7, it may be 10, 11, 6, I don't know, but almost in 2 figures. For a country used to at least 6% growth, that's a very big hit, which means even next year when we grow, people's incomes on an average per capita GDP will not go back to what it was in 2019-20. So that's a big hit that we have to now be humble about and calm things down. So there is no harm, I would say, in ceasing hostilities in domestic politics for a couple of years. In 2024, we can get, or mid-2023, we can get back to it in earnest, because that's a big issue. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know, because the argument from the other side is that if you were doing something so wrong as you guys keep cribbing about, then why are people voting for us? Now, that's also a good point. But then you see some countries and some leaders wake up in time, some leave it too late. And you have examples of both. I would say that, say, Congress party woke up in time under Narasimha Rao. May not have under Rajiv, I don't know. Although friends of Rajiv tell me that if he had come to power, he would have reformed even more. But I don't know. But you have Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, very popular, celebrated by the left around the world, great welfare schemes. But didn't wake up in time and see what happened to his country. So leaders are also very much a product of the environment they have around them. Who are they listening to? How clever they are in terms of how skeptical they are of the stuff that is told to them. So वो हिंदी में एक पुरानी I think ये रामचरितमानस की है कहाँ की है निंदक नेरे राखिए. Keep your critics close to you. It's very important. Even in the armed forces, when they make a plan, they make a dummy enemy team, enemy commanders, who then respond to that plan to see what might happen in real life. So I think that is what is needed. And I'm still hoping, because Mr. Modi is what is called as dharti se juda hua leader. He's not come from an elite background. He's not had it gifted to him. He doesn't have a legacy. He's built himself up from nothing. So I think leaders like that have a better understanding of realities, and they are more flexible. And the fact that he still retains his popularity more or less intact in his 7th year tells you that he has the leeway now to move back and forth.
Okay, thank you. Shekhar, I know that we started late, but I don't want to end up too late. But I just want to make one point, and it's not a question, it's just a thought. You have touched on it differently. If I put it in a business analogy, you know, we have seen in India and actually globally what we call startups coming and disrupting sort of very well-established organizations. The question is that when this continues, will there be a sort of a political startup equivalent happening, maybe driven from states, maybe driven by charismatic personalities, which will start, not immediately, may not happen in the 2024 election, but build up to that is an interesting thing. And maybe that's, we will look forward to your views through your columns on some of this. It could be an interesting thing. The second thought is, how do we, when we know this, and the facts that you are talking to us are fairly staring at us, whether we like it or not, whether the current administration will be comfortable with it or not, but how do we in a democracy build in greater awareness of this, not by being critical necessarily, but build an awareness. So as you said, your theme is, bhai, main to facts dekhta hu. अगर ये इधर बता रहे हैं मैं कहता हूं कि भाई अच्छा है, अगर ये बता रहे हैं ठीक नहीं है तो मैं अलार्म दूं, in effect. So that is another thing which I think the power of, I mean, amongst others, the power of media, print, thinkers like yourselves can help bring about. And the last point I want to make is from a business perspective. You know, you said you're an optimist. Despite all this, I think perhaps this crisis can be, as Mr. Jalan said, a reset moment. And we are seeing these reforms, as you said, many of which are very welcome, which actually the business community and many others have been asking for quite some time. Now, nothing will be perfect. There will be modifications. So I think we can build on this. And we have seen in the COVID period, at least from our own experience, suggestions that we are giving to the government from our chambers of commerce. And you know, I've been closely involved with FICCI, etc., still remain so, are finding traction. People are listening. Whether they listen to everything, impossible. But that is happening. So, you know, if I was to marry this with what you are saying, as you ended on an optimistic note, I think there is great possibility that if we do some of those things, it could be interesting. I mean, it would work out well for the economy as well as for the country, because ultimately, jobs, roti, kapda, makan, ye sab to chahiye na. And that COVID, we didn't talk too much about the employment side, but that has been a big setback, because a lot of data that is captured is all large companies and all that stuff. So things which are from unorganized sectors are not showing up as well. But on that note, I'd like to thank you very much once again for taking
Can I add a footnote?
Please.
We've seen a few startups come up. Now, there is a startup like, say, YSR's party in Andhra. But that's a party which is defined to be confined to a state. But the other startup that came up was more exciting, or still more exciting. That is Aam Aadmi Party, because of all the new startups, that's the only party whose appeal is not confined to a region, and that showed in their performance in Punjab. So it tells you that today digital technology, just as it allows people like us to enter the business by lowering the entry barrier, so it has done for politics as well. So that can happen. But second thing is my wish, if a new startup was to come, then I would fervently hope, I know it's not going to happen in India, I would fervently hope that the Swatantra Party of the cities comes back in some avatar, because that was the last genuinely libertarian party that we had, which was instinctively minimum government, maximum governance, and let people be free socially and let business be free socially. But you know, that bet was lost in late 60s. And since then, all of India's ideologies become socialism for some reason.
But thanks a lot once again for that. I just have one more quick question. I think Mr. Subodh Bhargav, you wanted to ask a question, if you're still there. Subodhji? Can we unmute him if he's still there?
He's there. He's there.
Can we unmute him if he's muted?
Can you unmute him, please?
He's a
Father?
very senior member.
You unmuted, Mr. Bhargav.
Am I?
Yeah.
Yes, Subodhji, please go ahead.
Shekhar, my compliments. Outstanding presentation. And I couldn't agree more with you. And I think what hit me most was your suggestion that the nation needs to take holiday from politics for next 2 years. My question to you is that can one election every 5 years across the country enable that to happen? Because with elections every year in some state or the other, it's unlikely to have the politics take backseat. And can intellectuals like you and the industry in any way add to Prime Minister Modi's voice of one election every 5 years?
Well, I think that requires a full debate and full session in itself, because that has many issues, because India is a federal structure. So one nation, one everything doesn't work. India is diverse, more diverse than any country in the world. And India has done very well with its diversity. So I'll just tell you briefly that all the new nation states that came into being after the Second World War, India is the only major diverse nation state to have survived intact. Even Indonesia broke up because East Timor went away. So India has managed its diversity very well. So, you know, there are dangers and implications to shaking up this immune system and this balance just like this. So everything is now becoming one nation, one card, one nation, one this, one nation, one that. We are one nation, but we are many hundreds of people. And we are doing all right. Every passing decade, we are more secure and more stable than before. So don't mend what isn't broken. So I think I worry about this one nation, one everything obsession. And to say one nation, one election means many state governments have to agree to finish their tenure early. I mean, how many state governments will be willing? And you might have the central ruling parties, governments to be willing, but why should the opposition states be willing? Because then they will know that they will face this juggernaut. So this is not easy. And before you go there, many other reforms have to be done. For example, Supreme Court has to start hearing that anonymous electoral bonds petition again. They put it in Thanda Basta in April of last year, saying that elections are coming. Election to khatam ho gaye May mein. Usko leke baithe hue hain, and they are sitting and mediating between farmers and government. So, I mean, if institutions spend all their time doing what is not in their remit and ignore what is in their remit, then you run into all kinds of complicated problems in a very complicated country. In fact, what I did not tell you, because that was not the subject, that the northeastern states, if you look at this National Family Health Survey data, the data from northeastern states is shameful. shameful. There are declines in double figures in percentages. The only one northeastern state which stands out on the upside on every parameter is Sikkim. All the other states have declined so heavily that you wonder. They've declined on not just these children's health issues, but also child marriage, also spousal violence, also sexual crime, all kinds of areas, and you wonder what's going on.
Thank you, Shekhar. I think that needs a long debate.
Thank you, Subodhji, and thank you all for participating. Shekhar, once again, thank you very much for this very insightful and interesting session. It was, you tried to relate this, and actually there can be several sessions. The whole role of institutions in India and what they are doing, including our Honorable Supreme Court, is a huge thing which you sort of remarked on at the end, and that's a whole session to be discussed, and really the whole trioca of the executive, the institutions, and the people in this is coming in. But thanks once again, and we will keep you engaged, hopefully again, and impinge on your time. And
I will send you an appeal while your members are there. I hope they pay for what they use, because otherwise they can watch Commando comic channels for entertainment, but they will get entertainment. We will bore them, but we will give them serious newsy stuff.
No, but print is doing a great job, Shekhar. I want to tell you that. And, I'll just end with one note. A lot of younger people, see, you and I, or at least not you, I and a lot of us still use, the other TV and papers and all this. But on the online media is what the youth of India is consuming. And that is where this can start making on opinions. So thank you.
And that's where we have a large following, particularly among aspirational ones who are appearing for All India services, people who are appearing for competitive exams. We now own that market, if I may.
Excellent. So thank you once again, everybody, for being here, and Rekha and your AIMA team for hosting this event. Great. Thanks. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Rekha always gets it right. Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you so much, Shekhar. Thanks for joining us. I'll certainly put forth your appeal to everybody.
Yeah, I will send it to you. Yes.
Thanks, Rekha. Thanks, Shekhar.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yes, Shekhar. Thank you very much. अब आप अगर खा सकते हो, ले सकते हो.
And you will happy to know. You'll be happy to know that Australia are 5 wickets down for 75. So.
Aha.